Hello, this is Dr. D here to talk to you about our standard writing rubric that we have developed for this course. Actually, what I would like to say is that this rubric would be useful in any course where you have a writing assignment. So I hope that you definitely consider that and use this for any large writing assignment you have, or even a smaller one. I mean, even if you didn't officially rate yourself, I think you could think about the different concepts and it would help you to improve your writing. At the top of the form, you'll notice there's a student name and an instructor or reviewer name line. So one of the things is to make sure you put, if you're reviewing someone else's, you put their name and your name so they know who did the review. One thing that you need to be careful of with feedback, and I will give you a feedback lecture later in this course, is that it needs to be kind, but it needs to be true. You can't not tell a person about errors you're seeing because you don't want to hurt their feelings. If you do that, it's not going to help them improve as a writer. So what you need to do is have care and concern for them and demonstrate that you understand this could be, a hard thing to hear, but you need to be kind with your feedback, just as you would if this was a client that you were working with in your social work practice. You need to be respectful and you need to be specific. So those are the main things I'll say about feedback right now. I will give you a lecture on that later. So at the top you'll notice there's student name, instructor, reviewer name, and it talks about our university. We have actually developed this rubric. It is modified from one Dr. Kroom and Dr. Grice Owens have utilized. She has also done, Dr. Grice Owens was our consultant on this project, and she has done quite a bit of research into social work writing. So anyway, in an effort to improve ourselves in our evidence-based practice, we sought out the help of an expert, which is something you should do at times for yourself as well. The writing rubric is developed into 5 core elements of professional and academic writing. In this course, you'll be doing some professional writing pieces and some academic writing pieces. So the rubric fits for both of those, and each of the 5 core elements will get a score of 1 through 5. You can see the scale here. 1 is poor, 2 is marginal, 3 is satisfactory, 4 is good, 5 is excellent. So you want to range up in the 3s, 4s, 5s. You're not going to be perfect on everything every time, even as I rate myself, and you will be doing some self-assessment in this course. I frequently find that something's marginal, or maybe it was unclear. Even as I wrote this syllabus, I sat down with another professional, and Ms. Pennington helped me to see some of the weaknesses in my writing. It is sometimes unclear, some of the things I say to you as students. And I understand that. Nobody is perfect. So you, as a student, need to also understand that you're going to have to work on things. It's rare that you turn in a perfect paper every time with in any scenario, because you're going to have strengths and weaknesses as a student. The first component or core element that we're going to talk about is completion. Your paper must comply with the specific guidelines provided by the instructor. We've listed 2 here, that the paper sufficiently addresses each topic that is specified. So if the professor has given you several items or concepts that you need to demonstrate that you understand in the paper, that you've addressed each concept. The paper has to meet page count requirements. You don't want it to be over page limit. You don't want it to be under page limit. So these are some specific guidelines that the instructor has given you. So you might look at a paper and you would think about these guidelines, and if it meets those guidelines and you think it meets them very well, it's well within the guidelines and it's clearly addressed all the topics, that would be a 5. If it left out one of the topics, that's probably a 4. And then in the comments you would write, I did not see where you addressed this specific topic, and you would tell them what the topic is. Or if it's maybe satisfactory would be it's within the guidelines, but it just even though it talked about the topics, it did not sufficiently discuss each topic. So the topics were poorly laid out. So, for example, the student was supposed to talk about what they thought about writing, for example, in your letter writing assignment, and they only said one thing about writing. They didn't give, an in-depth response. It was a very brief sentence. Well, it addressed it, but it didn't address it sufficiently. So that might be a 3. It might even be a 2, depending on how much substantial content was actually in that one sentence. So I hope this is clear for you on completion, and you would need to write in the comments specifically why you gave the score you did, whether it's an excellent or a poor or anything in between. You need to tell exactly why, and you can use the wording directly from these bullet points. The next core element is organization, and again, you're going to give a score from 1 to 5 on the scale above, based on scale above for organization. The paper is well organized. Does it have an introduction? Does the body of the paper relate directly to the topic described in the title and introduction? Is there a conclusion that makes connections between content areas and talks about the relevance of the evidence? Is there an APA heading and subheading that's used appropriately here? Are paragraphs focused on one topic, or are they all over the place and don't really flow together? Are there transition phrases? This is about organization. So they might have met the specific guidelines, but it could be poorly organized. So even though there's 5 pages as required, it might not have a conclusion. So that would not be well organized. You can't tell, there's not a summary statement at the end. So you would write, I did not note a summary statement at the end that drew connections between the content areas or talked about relevance. So you can specifically, as I said, pull out language from here and say exactly what you see. Or additionally, what I do sometimes when I give feedback, instead of writing it again, I'll just highlight. And in my comments, I might put note highlighted bullet point. The third area is development. So one of the things in this course we'll be talking about is critical thinking. The paper has to be developed in a critically thought out way. It has to be fully developed. Developed topics mean you've said enough about the topic that the reader can understand and the reader can apply it, or you have applied it for the reader in a way that is clear. So did the writer define terms that are key to the central topic? You can't assume when you're writing a paper that I even understand terms, particularly if it's technical jargon, maybe a new terminology used in a different way than is typical. You need to define those terms and how they relate to the central topic. You need to develop each new idea or content area with relevant and specific supporting evidence. This is a problem a lot. Students will not tell me how they know what they know. The supporting evidence could be an article, a web-based resource, as long as it's an appropriate web-based resource. It could be a scholarly article. It could be a scholarly book. It could be a textbook. It could be the textbook in your class that you're using. It could be your practice wisdom that you've worked with clients in this population and 3 clients have had this experience. So, your evidence doesn't necessarily have to be from outside of you, but if it is from you, you need to say exactly that it's from you and where you got that evidence. So, and you have to develop the area with evidence. So you can't just assume that just because you say it's so that I'm going to go, oh yes, that's right. The writer consistently interprets the relevance of the evidence. So you're going to say why this evidence is relevant here. And you're going to demonstrate creativity and originality of ideas. You don't want to just rehash old ideas. Now in a literature review, you may be doing that. But you're putting together the ideas in a new, creative, original way that develops this idea further or adds to it in some way. And that you manifest sufficient critical thinking skills for the appropriate level, and you're going to be at a master level here. So I would expect that you would be developing material in a master level manner. And then you would, put comments here. Clarity is the fourth area, that sentences are clear and coherent. There are a few proofreading errors. The sentences are concise. They're not too wordy, and I can understand them. They don't confuse me in the middle. Word choices are appropriate and precise. That is a problem sometimes. The students try to pull out the thesaurus and use words that don't exactly fit. The writer uses active voice most of the time. So these have to do with clarity. It's very important when you write that you have clarity. Credibility is the last, what's it called? Oh my gosh, I have forgotten. It is called a core element. So credibility is the last core element. The writer will use APA style to cite a variety of credible sources. So you're going to have to be able to assess, are these sources actually experts? Anybody can put a web page up. That doesn't make them an expert. Scholarly articles, were they peer-reviewed or were they not? Were they written by a trusted source, or was it a source that could be biased, like a newspaper article that is, or a news broadcast, a show that is very biased? For example, you might find that certain newspapers lean politically one way or the other. So is this an unbiased print media article, or is this one from one of those types of resources? You need to, as a student, have thought about that. Paraphrases seem appropriately reworded. That has to do a lot with giving proper credit where credit is due. If you're going to paraphrase, you need to make sure that you're giving the information back in the way it was initially intended, and that you use quotation marks for direct quotes. You have in-text citations as necessary. Your reference paper is a proper APA format, and that you give proper attribution to original sources. We're going to talk about plagiarism in this course, and we're also going to talk about evaluating resources for credibility. So those are some topics we'll have throughout the course. So I'm not going to talk at length, but I do want to make sure that you understand that that's what this credibility has to do with. Is the writer trying to pass off information that is someone else's as their own creative work? If so, that is plagiarism. You have to give proper credit. And you can use anybody's ideas and then as a starting off point where you're going to jump from their idea to your idea based on their idea plus other information gives you your new idea. That's perfectly okay. You just have to make sure that you attribute that original source where it needs to be attributed to. And of course you would write comments again. And then the person would get a total score. Your letter, I will be using this rubric to show you how it works, and I will give you a score from 5 to 25, because you're going to get at least a 1 even if it's poor, correct? So it will be from 5 to 25, and I'll use this rubric to grade your letter so you'll see how it's used. But I want you, if you have any questions about any of these terms, you may look them up, you may talk to your peers about them, and you may also email me with questions, because I really want you to understand this writing rubric. It's going to be a great tool for you, and I think you'll understand it in more depth as we go through the semester. But for now, that is my discussion and brief overview of the standard writing rubric for this course.